For this video, I'd like to take the time to reflect on the Declaration of Independence as we celebrate its signing 250 years ago. For this video, I'd like to focus on the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, which states that we hold these truths to be self evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I'd like to break down the preamble. In particular, I'd like to focus on a few words in the preamble and discuss their significance as it concerns our lives and our path of improvement. So here's the preamble again, and I've added some brackets for clarification. But what the preamble is saying, it says that we hold these truths, and they will explain what those truths are to be self evident. That is, that they are clear, they are apparent, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Those are rights that cannot be taken away. That among these rights are, so what they're saying is that there's these certain rights. Well, there's certain truths, and part of that, there are certain truths that we obviously know. It's just apparent from reason, and those truths are that men have been given, that God has given men certain rights, and those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, important, the Declaration is not giving us the rights, rather, it's declaring the rights. And it's the basis of those rights which allow us to declare independence from England. Because we believed and maintained that those rights of liberty and the pursuit of happiness were not being guaranteed by the English monarchy. So I'd like to discuss two of these: right to pursue happiness, right to liberty. And I did this intentionally in this order. So the right to pursue happiness, notably, is it's not the right to happiness, but it's the right to pursue happiness. That is the right to find the path that leads to happiness. Further, happiness is not a subjective happiness, or at least I should say, when the Declaration is referring to happiness, it's not referring to the subjective pleasure, comfort happiness, but rather it's a happiness based on the flourishing of the individual that comes through the cultivation of virtue. And this is rooted in 17th, 18th century philosophical thought called the Enlightenment, and even before then. And the Enlightenment is based on, enlightened philosophers, thinkers derived a lot of their thinking and views based off Greek and Roman thought. And Greek and Roman thought emphasized pursuing virtue was the way to living a good life. And so the idea then is that happiness comes not just through pleasure, or happiness doesn't come through pleasure, it comes through cultivating virtue or cultivating one's character. The Greeks believed that as you cultivated certain virtues, your life became more abundant, it was more meaningful, and that's the happiness that's being referred to. This is also seen in other political documents and treatises around that time. So the Virginia Declaration of Rights was a precursor to the Declaration of Independence. And then there's some other thinkers, William Blackstone, John Locke, and they both indicate that happiness is connected to something bigger than just pleasure or momentary joy, but it is rooted in our being and central to liberty. Now, in line with this, given that happiness is referring to, you could say, the right to pursue the good life, the right to pursue a meaningful life, this happiness is achieved through making choices. And so, in order to become and find the path to happiness, we have to choose and find that path. And that's where liberty comes in. Liberty is the right to choose and or you could say the freedom to choose, and also the freedom to be held accountable for one's choice. And so a lot of us focus on the first part of liberty and don't realize that there's a second component, and those are um, intimately connected. You can't have one without the other. Because what liberty is promoting is the opportunity to learn from our mistakes or to learn from our good choices. So the idea here is with liberty is we have the freedom to choose, and then we also the freedom to be held accountable, and it's that accountability that reveals whether our choice was good or bad. And if it's a bad choice, then we learn from that and we make improvements to not make that choice again. And if one were to be insulated from the bad choice, then they wouldn't be able to learn whether the choice was actually good or bad, and therefore their true freedom, which is really shown in their agency, their ability to make choices and grow and progress, is severely handicapped. And so, what you have here is this idea of us being given the power to choose. We then choose a direction. The ideal is to always make a good choice, but there'll be times where we make a bad choice and we experience the consequences of that. And depending on how bad the choice was, is the degree of consequence. But hopefully, it's enough to jolt us out of the um, the mistake. Hopefully, it's enough to show us that we made a mistake, and then we commit to improving again. And that's what you have depicted here: is you have the path, you make the bad choice, you metaphorically go down, and then you have a choice to get off the path and get back up and ascend back upwards, or you can continue to make bad choices and it goes progressively lower down until you decide to stop. And this is what makes liberty such a great blessing, though, because we take we have the first point of the choice, but then we say, well, accountability doesn't sound fun. Like I would prefer not to be held accountable, but it's the accountability that shows you whether the choice was wrong, and then gives you the opportunity to make a better choice. And if we were completely insulated from our actions, we would be no different than a baby. And that's really the difference between an infant, especially a newborn, and a growing child, is that as the child grows, the child is given more liberty, more freedom to choose. And if the child and the rearing is done correctly, the child should also be allowed to have more exposure to consequences to learn from those choices. And it's that interplay between choice and consequences that help the child to grow. And if a child is always insulated from their bad choices, then they're never going to know what was good or bad. The good choice really comes from what the fruit it bears. As Christ said, by their fruits you shall know them. It's as clear as day. If something's good, it will generally manifest. It might not be readily apparent. It depends on the choice too. And sometimes there's choices they don't realize until long in the future. But eventually you'll start to realize and you'll start to see the fruit. And you'll know that this is good. And that's how we raise kids. If kids do what's good, they should be rewarded, not they should be punished in some way so they know that that's not a good choice, and then they can learn to correct, improve. And so as we go forward and this month and as we have the 4th of July behind us, I encourage us to carry out the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, which is promoting liberty. And that is promoting not just the freedom to choose and letting people make the choices, but also letting them be accountable and to not stand in the way of accountability and let them experience the consequences of their actions so they can grow. And then let us be there along the way to help them. And this also applies to us that if we really promote and we value liberty, we should be willing to be held accountable for our actions. And we should use that as a moment to learn, to improve, so that we can receive the better blessing, the great blessing of improvement. Because our ability to overcome challenges is commensurate with how much of our character we've improved through the choices we've made.